Hey, how you doing today? Feeling a little bit stressed maybe? Pulled in a lot of different directions? I know most of us are juggling quite a lot. Our work, our home life, our personal life, the life we have in the community and the world. And so feeling balanced now, well, can feel impossible, especially since we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if life feels kind of like that, I think you'll enjoy my guest today because she talks about how it's not just work-life balance, it really is life balance. My guest is Allyson Park, a wife, mom, global executive leading corporate affairs for Mars Wrigley, a part of Mars Incorporated. You know, that company that makes a lot of your favorite candies like M&Ms, Orbit, Altoids, Skittles, and my favorite Dove dark chocolate. Allyson is responsible for all internal communications to 34,000 people, all public affairs, and all external communications across 180 countries to consumers, government officials, stakeholders, and the media. Allyson captured my attention a number of years ago when she wrote an article about work-life balance. And so I invited her on the show to share her updated perspectives on the topic. So take a listen. My guess is that you and I both will come away with an idea or two that'll help us to better manage what she calls life balance. Hello and welcome to Dr. Joe's Health and Sanity Call. I'm Dr. Joe, a wellness expert and professional speaker who helps busy people stay healthy, sane, and productive. For more information of how I can help you and your organization, visit drjoe.com, drjo.com. All right, so welcome, Allyson.
Thank you, Joe. Great to see you.
Nice to see you again. Listen, I noticed that the article that you first wrote talked about work-life balance, and now you're telling me, no, it's really just life balance. Tell me about that.
Well, this article I wrote on LinkedIn, it's in the featured articles, and I may just actually update it again and share it out with viewers, was all about life-work balance, because 2.5 years ago, that's really where, a lot of my energy was focused on how can I better balance my work and my life. And then fast forward to 2020, and here we are where everything is about life balance. School is often happening at home, work is happening sometimes at home. And so it's about life balance. And that's why I'm glad to join you on the podcast today and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, and just to let the audience know, you've got a busy, busy life. So that's why I picked you to talk about this issue. Plus, I love the way you talked about it being like a seesaw. And I always feel like it is like that. Life is like, balancing on a seesaw. But tell me a little bit about your life. Where are you in balancing it? What else is going on besides work?
Yeah, well, everything is a balancing act. It is a seesaw. It's up and down. And I think at the end of the day, it's not about every day being in perfect balance or every minute. It's about the whole. It's about the collective. I never want to be the busiest person. That's not what I strive to be. And so for me, it's, I am a global executive. I lead corporate affairs for Mars Wrigley. It's kind of my dream job, the passion I wanted when I was 21. And I now have this amazing job leading this amazing team, selling, great tasting treats and snacks all over the world.
But then I'm also including Dove.
Including some of your favorites, your Dove dark chocolates, M&Ms, Snickers, Orbit, and gum, all sorts of, yummy things, especially this time of year. Yeah. But then I'm also, I'm a mom of 2 middle schoolers. I've got a 7th and an 8th grader. My husband works full time. He's a litigation attorney. We've got 2 big dogs. We just moved 2 weeks ago. There's a lot going on, but there's a lot going on for a lot of people at this point in time. And so we're all, I think, challenged into, look, we're not going to get more than 24 hours a day. How do we make the best of what we have? And how do we become our best selves?
Yeah. And you mentioned also in the article that it's different, balance is different for different people.
It really is. And, one of my colleagues likes to sign her email addresses that says something underneath like, I'm sending this because at this time it works for me. That doesn't mean you have to respond. And, I think we all have to recognize, look, we have different goals. We have different dreams, we have different aspirations for ourselves, for our children, etc. And so, what life balance looks like for me is going to look different than for someone else. And so, my job isn't to project what I want onto someone else. It's to understand what's important to them and help them be at their best if they're part of my team or whatnot. And then how do others help me be at my best?
Well, you said that one of the things that you've done is really get clear on what your priorities are, what your values are, what's important to you and your family, right?
And no, that's true. I mean, that's some of the advice to kind of my younger self is, look, you're not going to find balance every day. You're going to seesaw, back and forth. But, you've got to define early on what's important to you and set your boundaries. And, I didn't do that earlier on in my career. I was kind of that person that every time there was an opportunity, I raised my hand, I said yes. And I woke up one day realizing I was living someone else's dream. And it was their dream for me, but not my dream for me. And so I think, simple kind of self-reflections, and this is a time of such reinvention and innovation that this is a better time than any to have that self-reflection and really stay true to what's important to you. What are your guardrails? What are you going to say yes to? What are the absolute no that you are not going to say yes to because you need that time for something else? And I think that's really critical right now.
You mentioned that you have this very simple exercise that you do whenever you feel kind of out of balance.
I do. And it's so simple that I'm not even sure, I should mention it, but I have given this advice to so many people and they found it helpful. So I'll share it. It's take a sheet of paper, fold it lengthwise. On one side, write all the things you love about your current life and what you're doing, whether that's your career, whether that's, anything that's an aspect of your life. And on the other side, write the things that you aren't as inspired by, that don't kind of pull you in the right direction. And then on the back side, write if you were able to just kind of wave that magic wand and kind of describe what you would wish your life would be and your life balance would be, commit that to putting pen on paper, and then kind of use that as a reference guide. Check yourself about it, evaluate your current life and say, is what I'm doing today, is it on track against this? Is it off track? Are there some small changes I can make? I'm not talking about big changes, but, for me, some simple things like, I work full time. And so I'm not always, sometimes I control my calendar, sometimes I don't. But I book time for lunch every day. I book time in the mornings and at the end of the day, just so I can make sure that when I wake up, I'm kind of in charge of my calendar. I'm in charge of my calendar as the day winds down, whatever time that may be. I look at my calendar for the next day. So you're going to hear me talk about scheduling. I'm a big believer in scheduling, leaving time for the things that you don't plan for. And so I don't believe in overscheduling. I believe in kind of, ideally 50% of my time during a week is spent in meetings and in conversations, and the other 50% is impromptu. It's for the work, it's for mentoring, it's for connecting. And so I try to keep some balance just in those kinds of things, but scheduling and planning for not only the expected, but giving me some time for the unexpected allows me to really be at my best in terms of life balance.
Yeah. And then it's not just your work calendar, which you were kind of talking about, but it sounds like you and your husband also have a calendar that you share, or is it all joined on the same calendar?
We do. We have, this is the first time ever in my career I haven't worked from the kitchen office, the kitchen kind of, table. I actually have a real office, and I've got a great kind of magnetic whiteboard in there that has not only my work calendar, but everything else that's just happening in life. Today my son has drum lessons and that's all, of course, happening virtually and in the home.
Oh my God.
So, I have to know these things because that's not when I want to schedule, an important meeting with my boss. He does not want to hear drum lessons going on. I don't think. He hasn't said that he does or doesn't, but, being thoughtful about, okay, how are the other people in this house able to live their best selves? And because we're all at home, so we're all sometimes a little on top of each other. And so it's important to have a schedule and know kind of what you're working for and against as a family.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you mentioned in the article was not only to understand what your priorities are and your values, but make sure you pick a partner in life and also a company in life that shares those values, correct?
That is absolutely correct. It's some of the advice that I probably give most often is that, when you're picking someone to either date or spend a good amount of time with, or hopefully spend a lifetime with, you want to make sure that you have kind of a common ambition. And you want that because, you could have that career opportunity to go move to another, city or state or country that you had never anticipated. But if you haven't had some of those early on conversations, then that can put some strain into the relationship. And I'm very, very lucky that I've got someone who, we've moved 3 times in the past 6 years to different states. And, sometimes his career is above mine. Sometimes my career is ahead of his. And it's just a matter of, not who's better or stronger, but how we kind of handle the trade-offs and figure out what's really, at best for everyone involved.
Wonderful. And I do know that in many people's lives, if you're a female gender, you tend to have a lot more responsibilities around the house. But I would imagine, I don't have kids at home right now, but I would imagine through the pandemic, a lot of women are dealing with more of the responsibilities with childcare, with schooling, with drum lessons, whatever it is. I mean, how are you managing all of this?
I think that's true. I mean, women I talk with all over the world play that back to me in terms of, actually before the pandemic, that a lot of women in their communities, and, I was in Cote d'Ivoire, Africa this time last year, and the women there were playing it back to me as well, is that, they're having to do a lot more responsibilities in the house. And this pandemic has put even more responsibility on many women in the house. And so that's stressful. It's stressful to have, the washing and the cooking and the cleaning on top of, the education, on top of the work, on top of other responsibilities, caring for your elders, for example. And there's not an easy solution. I think, again, it comes back to picking that right partner, someone who will share the load, someone who will understand, how they're contributing to the family versus just expecting it to be done, understanding where you need to ask for help. I'm a big believer that sometimes, I know myself, I'm not always great about asking for help. And so how do you ask for help that invites others in so that you don't have to kind of do it all yourself? Sometimes you need to pay for that help. And a lot of people right now are struggling either to make ends meet, or they're struggling because they're not comfortable having someone come into their house and care for their children while daycare is closed or what have you. And so, there's a lot of challenges that are facing people today. And I think as an employer, you have to recognize that people are, as my husband likes to tell me, we're all facing the same storm, but we may not be in the same boat. And so again, comes back to, listening. You're given two ears and one mouth for a reason. So how do you listen? How do you learn best practices from others? Some of the hacks that some moms have are great. They're super helpful. How do you get, others involved to kind of help you through it when you're struggling with some of the day-to-day things? And how might just a simple kind of assessment of how you're spending your time and where maybe you can start to push back and say no to some things, to say yes to some other things, could be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that you have a hard time sometimes asking for help. That is my worst weakness. I mean, I remember growing up, when my daughter was growing up, it was just, I just felt some pride in being able to do it all, but of course we can't, and then it all snowballs. So I have to kind of remind myself, if I don't ask, the answer is always no, because nobody knows that you need the help. So whether it's at work or at home, to give yourself permission to ask.
Well, and I'm a big believer that, you can have it all. but you can't have it all at once. And so
all at the same time. Or
you can't have it all at the same time. I mean, so, yes, you can do things and try new things and be, really put yourself out there, but stage it, phase it, do it in a way that, little steps that lead to bigger steps that lead to even bigger steps. And saying, it starts with saying no, and it starts asking for help and really making sure that you're clear on what your priorities are and what's important to you.
So with all the responsibilities that you have right now, have you, or perhaps some of the people that you work with or know, what kind of tweaks have they made in their priorities at home? Because obviously we can't do everything. What kind of hacks do they have to get it all done?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some great things in terms of, how people are inviting others in the family to come in and cook. The other night we made spaghetti, and my daughter took that extra sauce last night and turned it into a lasagna, and it was delicious. And so, how can you take shortcuts in ways that don't shortcut the overall experience? Less people are going out to dinner, but maybe they're ordering from a local restaurant. Local restaurants are doing a lot more, takeout than they ever did, and that sometimes can shortcut dinner when you need the time. Kids are doing less activities, so you're not in the car driving them around to different things. So that shortcuts some time. I don't find myself commuting every day. So what can I do in that time that I might normally be commuting? Sometimes if I'm on a phone call and not a video chat, I may, be throwing some things into the wash or taking a quick walk outside, getting some fresh air. And so, work is happening different. Life is happening different. It'd be great to hear from viewers on, what they're seeing, what life hacks they have, because at the end of the day, we can really all learn from one another.
So the other night, my granddaughter came over for her parents had date night, so we were babysitting. And I'm a PhD nutritionist, as you know, and so I focus on eating healthy food. But my husband decided he was going to plan dinner. And it's not like he doesn't do dinner, but he usually does dinner more my way. This time he went out and he bought lower fat hot dogs and a biscuit in a tube. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes, I know exactly what pigs in a blanket.
Well, that's exactly what he did. And I only know pigs in a blanket, sausage around, pancakes around sausage. But he was like, no, you can do pigs in a blanket with.
Oh, yes, you can.
Well, see, again, this is not something we would normally eat. That's not something I would initiate. But because we had the just 3-year-old over, and she had so much fun pounding out the biscuits and rolling the hot dog inside the biscuit, and she ate it, which she doesn't always eat my food. So, but anyway, I think that's kind of like one of my hacks, is just to kind of cut loose a little bit and not quite as strict or as set in my ways as to what dinner should consist of. We did have some salad on the side, but still,
I think there's a lot to do with grace here, right? Is, how do you give grace to yourself? How do you give grace to others? Where maybe, your kitchen always needed to be neat, but maybe it's not always neat because your kids are schooled at home and the lunch hour gets a little crazy and no one has time to wash all the dishes. I use a convection oven a lot. I find that's a quick hack. It cooks things so much faster. Or what kind of prep can I have that just makes the week kind of go seamlessly? So there's all these things that I think maybe we held ourselves to a certain standard that during this time is just, it's maybe a little bit too strict. And the world needs more people who are caring about one another, and the human race needs to be connected. And so I think it starts with grace to yourself and grace to others.
Well, that makes sense. I've got one more question before I let you go. And that has to do with, I know you say it's all life, but let's face it, when we are doing emails all the way up until bedtime, it sometimes impacts our sleep. When we're stressing about things right before bedtime, how can you stop the mindset about work so you can move into the other phases of your life, whether it's into your family, going to bed, and so that you're not stressing about the work part. Especially when, like you said, most of the time your workplace has been in the kitchen. How can you stop your mind from thinking about work and now go into the rest of your life?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I talk about in my LinkedIn post from a couple of years ago about turning down the noise. And so for me, one of the ways I do that is just through the calendaring, setting some time in the first thing in the morning, end of day, so I can kind of start my morning fresh and end my day in control. I'm a big believer in being action oriented. And so, I keep a list of what I need to do for work. And on the other side, a list of everything I need to do at home. And then that allows me to also go through the list and say, well, where should I delegate some of these things, either from work to others? And someone said to me years ago, and it's always stuck with me, I don't want to see you do everything, because when you say yes to everything, it takes away opportunities for the rest of us. And I think, that was so powerful for that manager to say that to me, because I remind myself of when could I bring somebody else in so they could learn this, they could see this, and then I can take on even more responsibility that maybe others aren't ready for. And then on the home front, how do I review that list at the end of the day to say, oh gosh, what did I not get done? What do I need to do quickly? Is there something I need to ask my husband for some help or one of the kids for help? So I'm a big believer in kind of you own your day. We all only have 24 hours. And so how do you kind of, if you can, allow yourself for, 30, 15 minutes, some sort of time at the beginning and the end of the day to kind of scale up and scale down and then be able to step away. Because, being in front of a computer for, 8 to 12 hours a day, however long your day is, you're having great conversations. You might not always just be getting work done in those meetings. Then there's the work on top of it. So you do need that time to be able to turn things off. And
so you're able, just with the calendar, to turn your mind off. Like for me, I would close down my office, close the door, and then that's, now I'm not thinking about work. I need to have that closing the door. I met a gentleman the other day who shared with me that the way he defines work is done, now I have to move on to the home life, is he changes his socks.
It's like Mr. Rogers.
Well, yeah, like with the, exactly. It is exactly like that, because let's face it, most of us are wearing the same clothes in our work life and in our home life. We just, walk down the hall. So he was saying that he changes his socks, and that defines in his mind to turn off the work.
Well, and a lot of people I know, that commute time allowed them to get their mind in gear for work or take their mind away, and they don't always have that. Or those who are essential workers are working longer hours, and so their mind's kind of always racing. I think the best advice I can give, and it's just for me of what's worked, is those to-do list, and then really looking through it to say, what is it that I have to do, which is, a great conversation I'm having right now with my boss of like, where do I need to spend my time? Where do I need to delegate things to others? And, unfortunately, it's not always as simple as changing your socks. I look at that and think, gosh, that's more laundry to do. So that doesn't work for me. But sometimes it's as simple as scheduling a walk at the end of the day and just having a little bit of perspective, looking at what does energize you. Is it watching a quick TED Talk or a podcast? Is it scheduling a walk? Is it just taking a moment to change your socks? I think we all need that. And for me, scheduling kind of 30 minutes at the end of the day for reflection on the day allows me to then kind of transition into
there you go.
The evenings and things. And I'd also say in a global job, sometimes I do have calls at 8 or 9 p.m. and I'm doing work late. And that's just the job I've selected. That's the job I'm lucky to serve in. And so that comes with the job. And so you have to understand those trade-offs of what you've, what's driving you and what's important to you in your life.
Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing you can also take a workout break in the middle of the day.
And I do.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that in LinkedIn. Yesterday, at 4:00, my daughter had finished school and she said, "Mom, do you have quick time to go on a walk?" And I said, "Yes." And then my VP of what we call people in organization, HR, called.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to take this really quick and I'm going to tell her I only have 5 minutes because I'm going on a walk. And I did. And I said, "Look, I'm getting ready to go on a walk with this one." And my daughter came in and I said, "But I've got 5 minutes." And she said, "You know what? All I need is 5. And so I think, again, it's back to those priorities. And, I know from my team, I don't want them in front of a computer, for 12 hours a day. I think they're actually going to be at their best when they get to walk away and, be stimulated from the external environment.
Well, all of this is such fabulous advice. Allyson, if somebody wants to take a look at that LinkedIn article that you wrote, how can we find it?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is spelled a little different. It's Allyson, Allyson. And of course, Park. It's under the featured articles. And listen, I'll take some time to reflect on this conversation and give it an update and share out.
Okay, well, that's fabulous. All right, well, have a great rest of the day.
Thanks so much. Great to see you again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's Health and Sanity Call, please subscribe to the channel and share it with others. For more information about how I can help you and your organization, visit drjoe.com. That's just 4 letters, drjo.com.